Sweet Christmas.
Shout out to my birds.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Che.
And this is Cory.
And this is the Next Time On podcast, a podcast where two lifelong friends talk about all things amazing and all things feted in popular culture. It's like if Shaggy and Scooby were intrepid podcasters determined to explore the unknown depths of TV, movies, and comics instead of morons determined to ruin Velma's day.
I mean, I think that's honestly probably been a storyline in some Scooby-Doo podcast at some point. Would not be surprised.
I really hope there's not a
not
Scooby-Doo episode where they're podcasters. I just don't want that in my life.
Would not be surprised if that's the future, honestly. Scooby-Doo mystery podcast drama.
Is there new episodes of Scooby-Doo somewhere going on now?
I mean, there has to be, I'm sure. You know, it's one of those things I feel like there's always something in syndication.
Well, because I didn't realize, and maybe this makes me an idiot, I didn't realize SpongeBob was still on TV last year or something. I thought all of the new episodes of SpongeBob stopped in like 10 years ago when we were kids.
Nah, man, that's it's still going strong in the rate. I mean, I think those things about SpongeBob is the ratings have just stayed good, so they don't really have to
it's so weird.
reinvent the wheel. But I feel like Scooby-Doo, they have to have a new series every 2 or 3 years just to keep it going.
I guess that does explain why every meme is SpongeBob.
Yes. It's ingrained in our... It's like a focal point in our culture at this point.
Very odd. I mean, yes. I like SpongeBob as much as the next guy, but it does seem like a weird thing that our culture is glommed onto. But today we are not talking about SpongeBob. Although actually, maybe we are.
No, we're not.
No, I know we're not. I can see both of our lists. Today... if you read the title of the episode, you will know it is the beginning of list week. Woo! Which means it's the end of 2021, which is a good thing because this year has been trash, but also a bad thing because time keeps fucking moving. I thought it was 2019 yesterday, so...
Yeah, I kept forgetting that this was 2021 and that we're not going to be entering 2021. Don't know how that happened.
Yeah, it feels like...
Being stuck inside for 2 years has really fucked with me.
It feels like last year we did our end of the decade stuff, but it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But of course, before we get into our lists, a couple of points of business as always. Please go rate us 5 stars. It really helps us out. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, you can wait till the end to rate us 5 stars, but you will be rating us 5 stars. Don't worry.
Yes.
You can also follow us at Next Time On Pod on our social media platforms. We are everywhere. And you can find us at nexttimeon.net. That's where all of our archived writing, all of our podcasts are. That's where you can find all this list week stuff. I mean, this is the first one that'll be up, but if you're listening to this in 2022, all of the list week stuff is out there. We're going to be doing best TV, best movies, best comics, of course. And last but not least, go check out the YouTube. The link is in the description. This episode and the last 6 now, including some clips that we broke out that are pretty funny stuff, are all on our YouTube. Go over there, subscribe. It's a good time. You can see our beautiful faces. You can see the picture behind Cory, which looks like...
I think it's a lighthouse. I don't know.
Is it a lighthouse? So far away, I can't tell, but...
I am not in... I don't have a normal recording studio area yet. Hopefully,
yeah, we're both on the road. If
hopefully...
any regular listeners will recognize that neither of our backgrounds are...
And hopefully I'm going to be moving within the next week or two, so that's going to even be a different one coming up, so.
Oh, moving was, and I moved down the hall and I still hated it, but.
Oh, yeah, no, this is probably, I don't even have a place yet, but I know it has to happen in the next 2 weeks, which is very fun.
I hate to see it.
Love New York.
Let's do it, Cory. Let's do our top 10s, our top 10, what are we calling this? Everything that's not a TV, movie, or comic book really is fair game.
Basically,
this list.
Yeah, the stuff we don't usually talk about.
Yeah. You want to do your 10 through 6 first?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of feel like I cheated a bit, and I was kind of just thinking about more what I was enjoying in the last year, because unfortunately I fell down a couple rabbit holes where I would just only consume a specific type of media. But I got very into Bryan Sanderson and all of his many books. The Way of Kings series, the Stormlight Archive series is just, I think, a fantastic novel in its own self. I don't read those kind of books, and I think that this author has made me read these types of books, and it's been a both a fun hang, but also I'm like, damn, man, I don't even like this shit. And also, I said his name wrong. It's Brandon Sanderson. Just my brain is not even awake yet.
We're doing an early morning record for the first time in a while, I think.
Yeah. No, but yeah, so Brandon Sanderson, I think all of his books from this last year, I've really gotten into a lot of his series. I cannot recommend A Way of Kings more. Even if you're not into fantasy, I just think it's a very well done book. Then I got number 9. It's Gorillaz Sound Machine Live. They did it might have happened, I think, in early 2020, this thing. So I mean, I'm kind of cheating again, but I didn't get a chance to see it until this year in theaters. But they did a live stream concert for their most recent like album mixtape thing. It blew me away with how good it was. I thought it was just going to be something mediocre or like a long music video, but it ended up being this really, really well done like concert. If anything, just the way they were able to produce it during the pandemic was impressive in itself. I'm not sure how readily available it is right now. I feel like they might just still be doing like theater shows, but if you ever get the chance to like watch that, and if you're a fan of the Gorillaz, I really recommend that. And then I got was playing a lot of this game when it first came out. I think I beat it in the span of like 3 days, but Super Mario's Bowser's Fury. I didn't know an open world Mario game. It's like, I guess it hasn't fully happened yet. This is kind of feel like a more of a test demo for it, but I thought it was really well done. Just a fun ass game. If you have a Switch, I could not recommend that game enough. It's I think it's way too expensive for what it is, but I think it's like the only complaint I could have about it is just how short it was, which is why it's like not in my top 5. Top 5, I believe. Next up is a book that I've been reading a bunch. It's called All the Marvels by Douglas Walk. It is basically this guy's descent into madness, and also his attempt to lay out a chronological story of Marvel Comics over the last 60 years.
I still cannot believe an actual human person did this.
He read every comic from like that he was able. I think he was like wasn't able to find like 10 comics or something like that. It's a very small amount of comics he wasn't able to find. I'm about halfway through
insane.
it.
That's
it's pretty insane.
Only 10 would not have been my guess, especially as far back as Marvel's history goes.
And I think it definitely appeals to someone like me who's obsessed with this kind of stuff. But if you ever were like kind of curious to see just how far back these stories go and why, I guess there's so much to pull from. And I guess we're seeing it now with these obscure characters and movies and all that good stuff. But I thought it just so far it's a great read. And it's like, as someone who likes comic books and especially likes lore and long going stories, I think it's just a very well done composition of that. And but yeah, just finished up his first chapter on the Fantastic Four, which I think is, I have only read some of their comics, but I think it's just such an interesting way to look at comics and like their transition through like pulp comics and action comics and science comics, and revealing and understanding why they created the Fantastic Four to be who they were as characters, and like why they're not necessarily like full-on beat-em-up superheroes, and why they kind of like it works in that capacity. I never really looked at it from that angle, the way that he like portrays them being like this evolution of like pop art at the time, and just like kind of just like a mainstream view of like both superheroics and like what was becoming popular in like pulp fighting comics, mysteries, wild out there sci-fi. Just, and it's like, it's interesting that like the comic now, I mean, I don't really read as much Fantastic Four anymore, but at the time it was just so revolutionary to have these group of characters who can pretty much do whatever story put in front of them. And I think that's I feel like that's something that we don't necessarily have as much anymore. But the benefit of having the Marvel Universe is that there's so many things. And last but not least, I've still been listening to this album on repeat, but the Anderson .Paak Bruno Mars team up with Silk Sonic has been one of my favorites of this last year. I don't listen to as much music as Che does. I think we're very clearly about to see that, but I've been jamming out to this album. I don't have much of a critical taste in music, but I think it's fantastic.
I did love that Silk Sonic album. It was really good.
It's just fun. And they're just two very funny people, and I didn't realize that it's kind of just half of it is just most of a joke. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is like I get it now. This is just silly. And the Anderson .Paak, like the video for Smoking Out the Window where he's just on the ground for 30 seconds is pure comedy. just great comedy. Just watch that. Just watch that music video at least.
Yeah, Pac and Bruno Mars are probably two of the best like performers we have right now. They're just so excited. It's one of the tragedies of the last 2 years that like all of these great albums have come out, and like Cory has previewed, my list is rife with a few albums that I've loved this year, but not a lot of people have been able to actually tour. It's starting to happen now. People are going on tours, but the Silk Sonic tour would be a tour I would absolutely go to. That's gotta be an amazingly fun concert.
Yeah, and like I mean, watching the Gorillaz one was just like, damn, I would love to pay to see this like in a live performance. Like this is good, but like I would like love to pay to see this live. But yeah, it's like two things that really have sucked for the music industry. Like, cause I collect. I mean, Che and I both buy vinyls, and I mean because of that was like this huge fire at a vinyl factory. That like vinyl production has just very much halted, which is I think this is the reason why there isn't a Silk Sonic vinyl in existence right now. But yeah, there's been a bunch of like shitty blows in the last 2 years to the music industry and the print industry. A lot of I mean, all the industries that we're talking about in here have been greatly affected.
Although everything is, I mean, it's the good news. There is some good news at the end of 2021. That a lot of the stuff seems to be picking back up, and we talked about. Spider-Man No Way Home's massive box office numbers, which do suggest that like theaters are on the way back. Obviously, music, the streaming.
Well, who knows how this new thing's gonna work out? So you know
I have faith. I believe.
I don't think we're gonna go. I don't think we're going backwards, honestly.
Yeah. All right, I'll give my 10 through 6. Number 10, I had to put it on the list. It should be number 1 because it's still the best thing on TV, but I can't have it number 1 on my list every year in perpetuity. That's boring. So number 10 is Taskmaster, which had probably two of its best seasons this year. With series 11 and 12 both came out in 2021, including the New Year's special, which they're gonna do again this year, which I'm super excited for. 2 amazing casts, including I think my favorite moment in Taskmaster history. It's probably not the one that people are thinking of, where a man poops out his body.
Okay.
I didn't know how else to say it. That's
the worst. I haven't seen this clip, but
Mike Wozniak tries to do a task where he it's a fart fastest wins, and he basically has a hemorrhage. He's okay, so it's funny instead of, I guess, if he had died on set. But my favorite moment is when Victoria Coren Mitchell, who is a actual genius, gives a man tickets to the wrong sports team. So basically, she gives an Arsenal fan season tickets to Manchester United, which for Americans, it's basically like if you were a Dallas fan and somebody gave you tickets to the Washington football team. That was like, happy birthday.
That's mean.
It's the biggest slap in the face ever, and she's like genuinely confused as to why he's upset. It's amazing. If you're not watching Taskmaster, I don't know what you do with your life. If you're in America,
Taskmaster's such a weird show for me, where I like love it, but it's for some reason like whenever I'm not watching it actively, I forget that it exists, and I don't know why I keep doing that to myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I love that show.
Well, I think it's not. The reason it's not on my TV list is because it doesn't really feel like TV in the same way that we talk about other TV. I mean, I know there are people who like, mostly what they watch is reality TV or like game shows and stuff. But aside from Taskmaster and other British panel shows, I don't watch anything that's not scripted TV. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like it's the same category for me, even though I guess technically it is. But yeah, Taskmaster, still fucking incredible. Cannot wait for what's to come in 2022. It's going to be great. My number 9 is... once again, I have a basic bitch choice for books because all the books I read this year, not all of them, many of the books I read this year didn't come out in 2021, so the pickings for best 2021 book were slim. But I did absolutely love this book. This is Jason Mott's Hell of a Book, which I think won the National Book Award, so I'm in good company. I have some confirmation that I don't have shit taste. It is both at times very funny and at times quite poignant, and Mott's writing is incredible. It's basically a story of this narrator who's a black author on a book tour, and the plot is sort of, I would say, secondary. Mostly it's this exploration of his interior mind as he travels around the country basically hallucinating and drinking himself into a stupor. And
sounds very Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes, I think there's a lot of influence there. This is my first time reading one of his books. I'm going to have to dive into his work after this. It was a ton of fun, and like I said, at times a ton of fun, and also at times pretty heavy reading. So I really loved it. If you can, I may have to say if you can find it. It's a National Book Award winner. You can find it. You should go check it out if you're into that sort of thing. So now number 8, my first album on the list. This list could have very easily have been just my 10 favorite albums of the year. This has been an absolutely incredible year for music. And I'm going to 100% lose sleep over some of the albums I cut off this list and toss and turn at night. But I'm trying not to overthink it too much. I told myself only 5 albums on this list because it just seemed, half the list, that's fine. My first one is the Emma Jean Thackeray's Yellow, which is this sprawling jazz album that both feels very traditional at times and then is also wildly experimental. Not in the way that I think most people, when they hear experimental jazz, think like, oh god, dissonance and it's dense. This is not an album that's like, I think, hard to get into. I'm not recommending you guys like a challenging listen. Actually, it's a lot of fun, but the way she experiments with jazz is by introducing like entirely new genres. There are times in this album where it sounds like a house album, which is fitting because Emma G, the way I was introduced to Thackeray was through she played trumpets on the album of one of my favorite artists, this guy New Graphic, who is also a jazz and house musician. So I think her style and influence of music is pretty well documented. It's amazing. Again, that's Emma Jean Thackeray's Yellow, which, speaking of vinyl, I just ordered, so that'll be waiting for me when I get home. My one and only video game on the list, I did play a lot of video games this year, but by far my favorite was Deathloop, which I was quite worried for a lot of reasons. We don't need to get into the business behind the Xbox or the Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda, but I thought this game was going to get abandoned because it was Bethesda's last PS4 exclusive, and when it came out, it did have some bugs, like all AAA games do now, which is I am a little annoyed by, but it's the time we live in. But they fixed all the bugs, and just even before the bugs are fixed, this game is like so fun. One of my favorite video game series of all time is Dishonored, and this is by the same company that made Dishonored, and it has a lot of the feel of Dishonored, but with even more comedy involved. I say even more. There's no comedy in Dishonored, so just comedy involved. It's a lot of fun. If you can find it, it's PS4 exclusive in that you can also play it on your PC because consoles don't give a shit about PC gamers. So
no, they do not.
Yeah, they know we're not the competition, so they don't give a shit. If you have the ability to play that game, you absolutely should. And my last in this segment, number 6, is the second album I have on this list, West Side Gun. It's literally the greatest name for an album ever. Hitler Wears Hermes 8, Sincerely Adolf. Which is, I just love it. I mean, the title doesn't really. I mean, actually, it does sort of prepare you for the album. The album is this insane trap banger epic. Like every track is turned up to 1,000. West Side Gun's performance on this is like so charismatic and so gripping, and for an artist who, like, I will admit, I was not like a massive West Side Gun fan before this. I liked some of his stuff before, but I wouldn't have ever said that like he was in my top 10 rappers right now. This is a project that like shocked me for how good it was, and I really hope this is an indication of where his career is to go after this, because this was a ton of fun, and like I said, it's just like hype for, I think it's like an hour. So if you need to like clean your room really fast or something, you can throw this album on.
That's funny. I'm just going through and trying to figure out which books that I read this year that I might have missed any for my list. But now I'm like, oh no, I'm just behind on my goal for the rest of the year, and I only have 3 days to finish them. So, yeah. Well, I guess go fuck yourself, Goodreads, I guess.
I should say my favorite book I read this year was not a book that came out in 2021. That's Cavalier and Clay, which I think I have talked about on the podcast before.
Yeah, I think that you did mention that one. I think it was you definitely mentioned it to me because I now own it because of you.
Yeah, I'm not the first person to talk. This is a very popular Michael Chabon book, and we will be talking about it soon because I think the show is coming. I know it got greenlit a while ago, and
they're making a show in the book.
It's one of those ones that's been bouncing around forever. And I actually think this would be a really great show to be adapted for the TV. So.
As my ever-growing list of books that I'm always like, what am I? I don't have anything to read. I'm like, shut the fuck up. You have too much to.
I find that like books are the most difficult thing for me to like make a decision on because unlike like I'll listen to like any album. I don't give a fuck. I listened to the Olivia Rodrigo album because somebody told me it was great. And I was not a fan, but I'm also not a 12-year-old girl, so it wasn't for me. I find it very difficult to just pick up a book and start reading it if I'm worried it's going to be bad because that's a fucking investment. Like, versus like a shit movie, 2 hours of your life, so be it. Like even a terrible TV show, you can be like, oh, I watched 2 episodes, I'm gonna bail. I do so much research before I pick up a book that it does end up like sort of slowing down my rate at which I read because I end up like finishing a book and then taking 2 weeks to pick the next one. I'm like you. I should just like start reading shit, just like pick stuff up and see if it's bad or not.
Yeah, I think that's like I have a weird like habit, and I realize I do this when I'm just like if I'm reading like non-comic books, I'm just like reading like consistently, and then if I like just take a break, I kind of very much fall out of the habit of it.
Yeah.
Which is really bad for this podcast because I'm like reading, and then I'm like, oh, I just want to read a bunch of comic books now, and then I'm like, oh, I want to watch a bunch of TV now. So it's hard for me to.
We have to read a bunch of comic books sometimes.
Yeah. Like sometimes I just kind of fall into the habit though. I'm like, I'm just only reading comic books for a month, but then every once it's hard to kind of balance it sometimes. Because I feel like I'm getting so like annoyingly critical of writers now, where I'm like, oh, this is shit, like immediately instead of like kind of giving it a chance, and you can't go. It's like keeping the expectations from everybody that I'm just like I can't. It's hard to balance that for sure, especially going like from author to author, like because like yeah, I mean I like tried to made the conscious decision to pause reading Dune, just because I'm like I actually think I just want to watch the movie instead of like finishing the book in a sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's like that's why I'm like if I find an author I like, and especially if it's a new author like this guy Jason Mott, like I said I haven't read any of his other stuff. This is his 4th novel. If I find an author I like, I just gotta stick with them for a while. Especially if I keep reading their stuff and I keep really enjoying it, I'll basically just go through an author's entire history of work. If it's if it's worth reading. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there. Should we take a quick break and come back and start our top 5?
Yes, let's do it.
We came here not to make enemies. No. We came here to make new friends. Those of you who are last will soon be first. And those of you who are downtrodden will rise up. Yep. You know where to find us?
And we're back.
So
I
guess I'll.
Of course.
Yeah, no.
I don't know. We both paused. Great podcasters, of course. We're episode nearing 250.
You just usually bring us out back.
That's
into
fair.
It
That is my bad. We'll pretend like that silence wasn't there. I'll leave it in because this is organic. Top 5 now. We're gonna go to Cory's 5 first.
Okay. And I think I got 2 more video games, guys, in my list. But number 5 for me is Halo Infinite. I guess it's like maybe kind of recency bias, but who knows? I just have to say that as a longtime fan of this franchise, it is so good to kind of feel that good return to form, and also just having that like modern writing done well. It kind of unfortunately falls into the whole effect of like not reboots, but like soft reboots have where they have to correct a lot of mistakes from their previous things. But I think it does a really good job of that, with having a really fun narrative. Like it actually like has good. I was surprised how many good characters they were in this game. And it was just so, the same complaint I had the other game. It was just way too short, I feel.
Yeah.
The story mode wise. And I think the multiplayer right now is stellar. I'm sure the internet has some issues with the whole cosmetic, whatever.
Everyone
That's not
hates
really
all video games. Like, no video game has a 100% approval rating. It's
I think like the gameplay is fantastic. It's just the monetization of it no one really likes right now. And I can't disagree with them, but that's not really what
I don't really get. It's a free. The multiplayer is free to play, right?
Yeah, it's
I
like
don't mind free to play stuff that will monetize. Like if you want to try to sell,
it's just
I don't buy them. If you want to try to sell skins and shit, I don't give a fuck.
It's pretty bad though. Like it's like you can't even like earn. You can't really earn them. It's like that's what I feel like. It's kind of like I'd rather have paid the $60, gotten the single player and gotten a multiplayer, and I would have been fine with that.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I just disagree with that aspect of it. But that's not actually the gameplay itself. That's just Microsoft being dicks.
It's basically every company now, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, like,
somebody figured out that was the best way to make money from video games, and that's going to be.
Oh, absolutely. But this is just like it's that to the the greatest degree.
Yeah.
But the multiplayer is fantastic. But I really like if you ever have played Halo or you just kind of like enjoy like the story mode from those games at all. You don't really need. I feel like you don't really need a lot from the previous games to get into this one. But it's just a fun ride. I was surprised that a open world Halo game actually worked. When I heard about it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be dumb. But yeah, if you have Game Pass, I think it's free. I mean, it is free. I played it through Game Pass. But I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. I would probably give like 8 out of 10 if I did do that. But yeah, really good.
8 out of 10 IGN.
Why do I always feel like I have to like rate like video games, but like not movies though? Like movies are just like good or bad or like watch it for yourself.
Yeah, I don't know.
The Matrix was just bad. That's not the podcast.
People like that movie. That's
why.
I don't have answers for you, Ben. I don't. I really don't.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that.
All right. My number 10 is. I don't even feel bad because I see on Cory's list he's got a podcast on there, so I'm not.
I do have a podcast, yeah.
Yeah, we always give me shit for advertising other podcasts. Like
I was gonna plug this podcast, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do this. And then after like when we got, I'm like, this was actually a genuine enjoyment through the last year, which I guess is the point of this.
Yeah. So my podcast, which again I'm sure has come up on this before, is probably my favorite podcast of this. But it's this and the Rewatchables and Football Ramble, which I've talked about also on this podcast. But this is Off Menu with James Acaster and Ed Gamble. That will not be the last appearance of James Acaster on this list. Just a spoiler. It is the cleanest idea for a podcast ever. It is two amazing comedians who are also very good friends interviewing usually somebody at the beginning at least. Now it's become so popular, people come on to like do their books and stuff. But at the beginning was like just them and one of their other comedian friends, and they would ask them about their dream meal. You know, your dream starter, your dream main, dessert, drink, side, all that stuff. And it sounds like, listen, it's like a fun food podcast. Everyone's talking about food, but of course the added addition of just like brilliant stand-up comedians makes everything great. There are some truly amazing moments in this podcast. If you are looking for an entry podcast, if you're like wary about it, I always recommend the Jess Phillips episode. She is a MP for the for Brighton, I think. I'm not pretending to be an expert on English politics, but she's basically an esteemed, respected politician in England. Comes on this podcast and gets yelled at by James Acaster because they have no filter. It's great. It's a lot of fun. These guys are fucking hilarious. The podcast is, and it's just like fun listening to. Like I've re-listened to so many episodes, mostly because I just like background noise when I'm writing or something, and it's the perfect background noise.
It's not fair. They're so much more funnier than us, and I don't.
No.
Like
it's the second best podcast on planet Earth. Let me be very clear.
Third best.
It's third best. You're listening to the best podcast, and then there's other
230
ones.
I'm gonna give it a shout out to 230 the podcast.
There are other podcasts available. Once you listen to all of our podcasts, you can go check out 230. They're homies. Then you can go check out off menu. And then I guess there's some other ones, like doesn't Joe Rogan have a podcast or something?
Fuck off. All right, number 4 is the podcast. So damn, I forget how much this sounds bad, but it's called Dungeons and Daddies, not a BDSM podcast. That's part of the title. It's part of the title.
It's a Bronies podcast, though, right?
It is a Bronies podcast. But no, in actuality, it is like it's a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. But what it does different than every other ones, it has these 4 really funny people. Freddie Wong, Matt Arnold, Will Campos, and Beth May. They all play 4 stereotypical dads. Like they have the sports dad, the hippie dad, the stepdad, and just the stoner dad. And they're flung into the Dungeons and Dragons high fantasy world, whatever. And it is one of the funniest things I've ever listened to.
Wait, you mean Freddie Wong as in like Rocket Jump Freddie Wong?
Yep. They're all
cool.
Rocket. They're all Rocket Jump people. Except I
they?
think Beth May is like a younger comedian like our age. But I think all of them, yeah, they're all like affiliated with Rocket Jump. Yeah, no, it's just Freddie Wong. I think he does I think he produces and does the music for it. It is just highly produced, well done. It is so fucking funny. And I think they just finished their first season of the show. And I listen to a lot of these kind of podcasts because they're very good, like fun background noises. And it's like comedians can very much flex their muscles in these silly things, these silly worlds. But I feel like this is like the best version of that. And if you want, and Anthony Birch, who's like, I think he wrote Borderlands, and a bunch of other, I think he's like done a bunch of other things. He's the one who he wrote it. And I mean, he's the person who runs it. And I think he's just such a funny person on top, on the moment. And he lays out a narrative that is well paced, well done. And I feel like because I think the problem with these long running kind of things where people are actively working in fiction, the comedy podcasts always get a bit too serious. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not here for these, you guys acting in your emotional moments. And I feel like this show does it well enough that I'm like, okay, it balances it so well that I'm consistently laughing or entertained. And it's just, I think it's really hard to establish a well done narrative between 5 people, but they balanced it very well and they ended the show on a very well done and well earned note. It's like one of the only podcasts that I subscribe to a Patreon for. That's how much I like it. Also, I just hate commercials. Yeah.
It's as soon as there's another podcast that I also subscribe to their Patreon to get the commercial free one. And for a while I just subscribed just to support them. And the podcast app I was using didn't support custom RSS feeds. So I couldn't actually get the commercial free one. And I literally switched my entire podcast app so that I wouldn't have to hear commercials anymore, which was a pain because I listen to a lot of fucking podcasts and I transfer them all over. But yeah, I'll have to check it out. I'm not as big into Dungeons and Dragons as the world seems to be at the moment, but I do love the Rocket Jump guys. So yeah, I didn't realize it was their podcast.
Yeah, no, they're really good. I'm not a big fan of their other podcasts as much, but they're just very, very funny together.
Yeah.
It's a great idea. I think it's called Story Break, where they try to fix movies, but we do a better job of that on our podcast in the Bad Movie Review. So
yeah, we're the only good movie podcast out there. Everybody else is second tier to us.
Yeah, how dare they be actual writers? We're actual writers, whatever.
I've written things before. Just because no one's ever read them or have been published or seen the light of day doesn't mean I'm not a real writer, Corey. That's what I keep telling my therapist.
Che, you're technically published. Shut up.
I'm not technically published.
You're technically published. It's on the website, which counts.
Just because you upload something onto the internet doesn't mean you're published. That's not what publishing is.
Fine,
but I appreciate.
We're 1.5 published writers. Are you happy now?
I'll take a half. Fuck it. I'll take a half. All right, my number 4, the third album on my list is the Haram by Armand Hammer and the Alchemist. I think one of those names will be pretty familiar to people. The Alchemist is a legendary hip-hop producer, has been doing this kind of forever, and has just been on a run recently where I think because he's just maybe because he's got all the money he's ever needed, or because he's proved to everybody that that will ever have any doubt his artistic integrity or his artistic merit, and is at this point just working with really interesting rappers. He's released 2 projects with Boldy James in the last couple of years, maybe even 3 at this point. I kind of love everything he's been doing, and on top of that, Armand Hammer is my favorite hip-hop group working right now. Billy Woods, an absolutely insanely talented lyrical genius from New York, and Elucid, also another New York City rapper, also fucking incredible. Another guy's been doing this forever. Have teamed up on, I think, let me quickly Google it. This is their fifth studio album, including one mixtape, Half Measures, which was my introduction to their team up. Obviously, I'd heard about them before, but it's so good. This, I think, is their best LP, and a lot of that is because of how amazing the production is from The Alchemist. This album, it is a tough first listen. I will be very honest with you. It is a dense hip hop album to get into. Honestly, most Billy Woods and Elusive projects are. But the way this album unfolded for me over the year, it just like, so this came, no, just double checking. This came out in March, yeah. And I've basically just been listening to it essentially on repeat since March, and it has only gotten better. I just absolutely, I'm in love with it. I love everything about this thing, including the cover, which is, it's a rough hang, I'll be honest. I love the title, of course, is Haram, and the album cover is 2 pig's heads. it's just great. These guys they don't give a fuck about anything, as most New York rappers know, and most New Yorkers know. Corey knows that New York niggas don't give a fuck about anything.
So dead inside right now.
But yeah, that's my number 4. Corey, what's your number 3?
I don't know, man.
You can't beat that inside yet. We have another podcast to record. Liven up, man.
Blah, blah, blah. So my number 3 is another book. I did talked about this book earlier this year. It is by Andy Weir, Project Hail Mary. Same author from The Martian. It follows it's very similar to The Martian in the fact it's about one person isolated trying to solve a very difficult problem that they find themselves in. And I don't want to spoil anything because it's a very well done mystery you get the answers as it's going along. This astronaut who wakes up on the space station with no memory of how he got there. And he's basically trying to put together the pieces on why he's there, what he's supposed to be doing in this space station. And it's just kind of slow. Like then he in the book, it kind of goes flashbacks. And as as the story goes on, he starts getting more and more of his memories to the end reveal, which is just very well done. It is a lot more sci-fi than The Martian. Definitely a lot more out there. I was surprised how much more out there it was in comparison to The Martian, but still well done. I liked it. He's clearly evolved a bit more as a writer since The Martian, but really good. And I'm sure the movie, whenever it comes out, is going to be good as well.
Yeah, this movie also continues the Ryan Gosling just wants to go to space.
Is it Ryan Gosling?
Yeah. He's currently, I mean, the movie is like so far in pre-production, like things might definitely change.
I mean, I think his other book too. I mean, his other book, Artemis, was also sold before it even came out. But I guess I don't really think anything's come out of that yet. I know Rosario Dawson was attached to it, but that book is not good. It's not a good book.
Hate to see it.
Hey, listen, I try them. I try my favorite authors, but yeah, it's as I feel like Artemis was definitely a misstep. This was very good. Hey, listen, I think sometimes you gotta write what you know.
Yeah, I just looked it up. So apparently, 20th Century Fox has bought the rights to Artemis, and no actors attached. Although your brain did word association because Rosario Dawson did narrate the audiobook.
There it is.
That's where it is. Yeah.
There it is. Okay.
But I'm very. It's another book that's on my list. Definitely need to check it out. I know you loved it, and I really liked The Martian. I read after watching the movie. So.
It's just a really fun read.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right, my number 3, the penultimate album on my list. This is the Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and London Symphony Orchestra collaboration, Promises. What can I say about this album? It is less an album and more like a 46-minute short film, really. It's like this. It's this story that sort of expands over the course of listening, where themes are introduced at the beginning and they play throughout. There is like this. I'm not a musical person in that I'm not like played an instrument before, so I don't know a ton of the musical terms. But there are like these chords and notes that cycle through your listening experience throughout it. It is one of the last albums I can remember. For one of the albums I can remember for a long time, that is basically required listening all the way through. I could. It's like picking a favorite track from this. It's split into 9 movements, I believe, and 9 movements, and they're each about ranging from like 3 to 10 minutes long, as most jazz tracks will. But you can't really pick one out and like listen to it. So like, I've listened to this album all the way through. I think maybe a dozen times at this point, but never sat down and listened to one track. And that's because it's like it is in a lot of ways like a singular experience. It is kind of it's also like a very incredible collaboration. Like Pharoah Sanders, obviously a jazz legend. Floating Points is a British electronic musician who has made like a lot of like really experimental. Let's call him like an electronic musician. I think people think of like Skrillex. I don't actually know if people think of Skrillex in 2021 anymore, but that's not really that's not a fair comparison. But that's the best label I could give to him. He does a lot of really avant-garde, interesting music production, and then of course the London Symphony Orchestra is a fucking orchestra. So like, it is 3 completely different ideas. I think different approaches to music coming together, and instead of butting heads against each other, they form this one idea that is wholly unique. There's not really an album I've ever heard that sounds like this, and if you can, which I think it is still pretty widely available on vinyl, I basically listened to this album once and then insta ordered the vinyl, and listening to this on vinyl is like a must. It's the recording quality is so incredible. It sounds so beautiful. It's just an amazing thing to listen to. I had so much fun listening to Promises over this last year, and I will continue to listen to it deep into 2022. I'm sure of that.
I gotta give it a listen.
Yeah, it's great.
All
and
right,
in a year that had a lot of great jazz albums, this is the best. This is the best.
I definitely will give it a listen. All right. Well, my number 2 is I went with a so we're establishing like comic book lists and stuff like that. So I was like, I just want to pick James Tynion the Fourth. He is primarily known for. I mean, we've talked about him a lot.
We did a book club of his. Something is Killing the Children. It was our last book club, right? I think.
Yes, I believe it was. Something is Killing the Children. Wind, WYND came out this year as well. House of Slaughter, Department of Truth, and there's another, and The Nice House on the Lake. Those are just 4 of the books that are coming out. I'm sure he has others that have been coming out this year.
Joker War finished in early 2021, I think.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's his best work. No. But I think like between those 4 books, I think he's just been like has grown on me as being one of my favorite creators in the last year. His ideas are just so original. I think he's just such a good job of writing believable characters. He does such a good job of representation. I think he's definitely going to be like he's definitely my favorite, like in the new wave of how comics are going to be in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
I've grown to really love his work. And now I'm just very much, every time he does something new, I will immediately pick it up. I'm sure I'll have a book or 2 of his on my top 10 list.
Yeah, this will not be the last time you hear his name this week.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. So I don't have much to say besides this. I just think he's one of those. He's become one of the writers where I'm just like, if he's writing it, I'm gonna give it a chance.
Yeah, we had bounced around the idea the last couple of years of doing like a creator of the year, just like artists in general that we thought had an amazing year.
It's just hard to do that.
He would have been on the list, yeah.
Yeah, and like it's because unfortunately it's like him and Jeff Lemire who puts out so many books. It's just like it's hard to pick just one, but I definitely think he's. If you haven't given a chance to any of his writing yet, just go to a comic book shop, and just if his name is on it, I recommend picking it up.
Yeah.
Something is Killing the Children, Wind, Mess on the Lake. They're all very, and he does such a good job. He's just across the board. All of his books are very different. But yeah, I mean, if I recommend something is Killing the Children and Nice House on the Lake.
Yeah, I think Something is Killing the Children is probably the best entry. If you've never read any of Tynion stuff before, that's the best entry level thing. And you can listen to our book club podcast on the first volume after that too. So
100%.
It's a double plug.
There it is.
All right, my number 2 is a little bit of a cheat. Although I don't feel so bad because Cory also did a little bit of a cheat earlier, so it's fine.
You know.
Technically live streamed in December 2020. I think a couple days before we recorded our week or year-end stuff, but wasn't dropped on streaming or wasn't available for in-home viewing really until March 2021. So I'm claiming it. In a year of truly bland and boring stand-up, for a lot of reasons, mostly because you couldn't really do stand-up for the last 2 years, so hard to record a stand-up special. I know everyone lost their mind over Bo Burnham's Inside, which was a real flip on the genre, or the medium, really. I also know Tig Notaro did a animated stand-up special. People really experimented with the drama because obviously you couldn't go out to clubs and theaters and do specials. But my number one stand-up special of 2021 is, of course, a British man, a white British man, a thin, gangly British man named James Acaster. Recorded in 2019, so it is recorded in front of a full live studio audience. And this is Cold Lasagna, Hate Myself 1999. It is a 2-hour stand-up special. I put stand-ups in quotes in the notes because it's not really like any other stand-up I've ever seen before. I think James Acaster, although he has the cadence and tone of a man who feels like he does quirky joke humor, and it kind of does. Obviously, I talked about Off Menu earlier. He loves a dad joke on Off Menu, and it cracks him up to no end. But there is something really incredible about his stand-up special. If you guys have watched his repertoire on Netflix, which I think was quite popular, you'll know that a lot of what he does is exploring really the darkness within him. He has talked about a lot that he is a person who struggled a lot with depression and just mental illness and a lot of things. And the Cold Lasagna, Hate Myself is this story of the worst year of his life and the best year of his life, as he says. 2 different years, basically back to back. And it is this journey of you see this man go from, on stage really, you watch him go from bleak sadness to joy and back again, and the whole time you're dying laughing. I honestly couldn't recommend this more. I know it's my number 2, but it is the thing on my list that I think everybody should watch. It's available on Vimeo for I think $10 or something, I don't remember. But easy viewing, and you should go check it out. I think this thing is incredible, and also very timely still. I know it was recorded in 2019, but of course the world, surprisingly, shockingly, hasn't gotten a lot better in the last 2 years. So a lot of stuff he talks about is still quite relevant.
I've been meaning to go back and watch that ever since coming across the season on Taskmaster and realizing how fucking funny that man is. He's just fucking hilarious. I'm not even really much of a stand-up person, but yeah, no.
That's the thing is, I really love a great stand-up. The problem is stand-up, I think, has been especially in America, has just been in a rough place. I mean, I have no interest in having the Dave Chappelle conversation on this podcast, but I think that stand-up is very indicative of the problem with American stand-up at the moment. It's very reactionary and not very innovative. And Cold Lasagna, Hate Myself 1999 is one of the most innovative stand-up specials I've ever seen.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's the people, we've hit the formula, and that's kind of become what it is. I mean, comedy has become a science. I mean, there's fucking schools about it. All right. So we got one last one each.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our number ones.
Sounds good.
The girl's a problem. Lawman said they keep looking for her, something about her brain being all special, important to the Alliance brass. Sooner we dump them two, the better.
Suppose so. Funny how the lawman got out of his room. You haven't tied him up so well and all.
I didn't have nothing to do with that. Anyhow, it all turned out just fine. Buzzard's the only one's gonna find him.
But he did try to make a deal with you, right? How come you didn't turn on me, Jane?
Money wasn't good enough.
What happens when it is?
Well, that'll be an interesting day.
Imagine it will.
And We're back.
What's up?
We are doing our number ones. This is our favorite thing of the year that wasn't a comic book, TV, or movie. So it's a mouthful, but what are you gonna do? Cory, why don't you go first?
Sure. Well, I don't think this is my favorite thing of the year. It's probably gonna come in through one of our other 3 lists for this year. But the Guardians of the Galaxy video game is something that I didn't expect to not only like, but love. And it's so interesting to me where like a game where I think the gameplay itself is fine. I don't think the gameplay is the best thing ever. It's nothing really super original, nothing I haven't done before. But I think it's just the story. And I think the benefit that like television shows and video games have is having this so much time spent with these characters that you just like end up feeling like a part of them. And in the video game, which definitely takes a lot of like inspiration from the movies, but it finds itself in such a middle ground between the movies and the comics that I just ended up liking these characters even a bit more than the movies themselves. It does the funny moments. It has the quiet moments. I think it's just like a masterpiece of at least storytelling in a video game. I just like it's the one game I keep thinking about. It's just like I want to go back again. Just like if it was a movie, I'd go back and watch it again, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think I've had like this much fun in like a narrative game since probably the Spider-Man game. We both like comic books, but probably the reason why. I'm excited to go back and play it again in the near future. But yeah, no, I think this is one of the better things I spent my time doing in 2021.
Yeah, it's weird. I basically hadn't heard this game. Like I didn't know it was coming. I usually know games are coming. I sort of pay a little bit of attention to that, and I didn't know it was going to happen or that it even came out until everyone was like, "This game is incredible." I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
There's a Guardians of the Galaxy game? It's good? What?"
And it's like weird because I remember hearing about like what it was going to be like. You only could play Star-Lord. I'm like, yo, that sounds like it fucking sucks. Why would I only want to play as like Star-Lord and like when I have like a team game? And I was like, why don't we just make it like one of the Ultimate Alliance games or something and like kind of switch around? And I'm not saying they couldn't have done that, but I do like giving you like a focal point as a character. And I think it does a good job with like having that single player experience and like working off other characters. It's just like really well done. It's like a fun Mass Effect basically. But yeah, really like Guardians of the Galaxy. I cannot recommend that game enough. Especially if you like the movies or the comics. If you're someone like me who likes both, you'll love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on my list. I mean, all this stuff has been put on pause until after the list week is done. But I think as soon as list week is over, I'm gonna jump right into that. So, all right, my number one. If you've been counting along at home, you know this is an album, and there was, like I said, there was a lot of incredible albums this year. Many that got left off the list. I'm trying to be good this year and not do a million honorable mentions because Cory, for some reason, won't let us do 3-hour podcasts. I wanted to do a top 50, but he was like, people don't want to hear that, which is confusing to me. I don't know why you wouldn't want to hear that.
Stop it. Do your thing.
This is my number one is Injury Reserves. By the time I get to Phoenix, it feels like in a lot of ways the culmination of a journey of this group that I've spent 7 years with, which seems crazy to me. Their first mixtape or EP, whatever you want to call it, Live from the Dentist Office, which dropped in July 2015. One of my favorite albums of the year. I think this was when I was still...
That was 6 years ago. Yeah. Jesus, that sucks.
I think when I was still doing like music stuff on the website, which you can still go find. It's actually still there on nexttimeon.net. You just got to scroll back to 2015.
I mean, that was when we just started this podcast.
I think that is pre the podcast. This is the podcast 2016.
Might have been.
This is back in the day. But basically, I think I had this at I had that Live from the Dentist Office at like number 2 or 3 at the year-end list. And it was incredible, but again, it doesn't sound anything like this. By the time I get to Phoenix, is so different from that, and it feels like it's a different group. But like I said, it feels like the culmination of a journey, in that you can see the change over these last few years. Their debut album, official debut studio album, released in 2019, self-titled Injury Reserve, and was this very experimental hip-hop album where they really just flipped the genre on the head. By the Time I Get to Phoenix does the same to like a thousand degrees. There's kind of nothing that sounds like this. The only I think the closest thing I can think of to this album is Clipping, which I've talked about here before. It's the Daveed Diggs led hip hop group that also is quite experimental. They don't really sound the same at all, honestly, but they have the same ideas and approach to music, I would say. On top of that, this album is it's really an emotional journey musically, but it's just an emotional journey in reality, because this is the I guess final album of their third member, Stepa J. Groggs, who died in 2020 suddenly. I imagine from COVID. I actually have no idea. I don't think that's ever made public. So they have said, and he is on the album, they've said that his recording was essentially done. So a lot like, and I think actually really sort of ironically, I don't even really know what the right word is, my number one last year was Mac Miller's Circles, which is very similar in that it was recorded and essentially completed, it seems, before he passed, and then released posthumously. And it's impossible to separate the experience of listening to that album and this album, in which Groggs is talking a lot about his struggles with the world, mortality, what it is to be a black man, a man in general, a father, a friend living in 2020 and 2019, and this time. And it's impossible to separate that from the fact that, I mean, this is sort of his last imprint on the world in a lot of ways. And it is, like I said, it's very emotional for a lot of reasons that obviously lends it, increases the experience and the emotions listening to it. But this album is it's an amazing piece of art. It's another one like Promises, like Yellow, like all these albums I've talked about. It's just something that I've just been listening to on repeat over and over again since it came out, and will continue to listen to going forward. I'm excited in a lot of ways, and I'm also quite sad, obviously, for what's next to come for the remaining two members of Injury Reserve. I don't think they've made an official statement about whether or not they will continue making music. I don't think they suggested that it's the end of it, but obviously things will be quite different going forward. And I don't really know what that looks like. But if you are looking for a experimental, challenging hip hop album, this is the album for you for sure.
I gotta give it a listen. You have a very you do a good job of selling me on these music albums, and you were not wrong on Circles last year.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I bought the vinyl immediately after. I think I listened to after we did the same one. I listened to the album like right after recording, and then I bought the vinyl the same day.
That's another one that's just like.
It's a constant rotation, but I'm like, why do I keep making myself sad?
Yeah, there's a couple times where like I'm like sitting in my apartment and I'm like real happy. I like poured a glass of whiskey or something. I just finished a movie or a TV show. I'm like, I want to put an album on, and then I start Circles and I'm like, I can't do this right now. I fucking love this album. Mac Miller's was incredible, but I can't be crying on at 2 a.m. on a Thursday. I just can't do it. I'm sorry.
I get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess this was our top 10.
Should we run down our list really quickly before we go?
Yeah.
Just give the people a reminder what we got.
Sure.
I'll do my 10 really quick. So,
you go right ahead.
10, Taskmaster. 9, Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. 9, Emma Jean Thackeray's album Yellow. Number 7, Deathloop. Number 6, West Side Gun, Hitler Wears Hermes. 8, Sincerely Adolf. I love it every time I say it. Number 5, Off Menu. Number 4, Armand Hammer and Alchemist, Haram. Number 3, Promises by Floating Points, Pharoah Sanders, and the London Symphony Orchestra. I've got number 2, Cold Lasagna, Hate Myself, 1999 by James Acaster. And finally, number 1, Injury Reserves by The Time I Get to Phoenix.
And for me, I got number 10, the author Brandon Sanderson. Number 9, Gorillaz Sound Machine Live. Number 8, Super Mario Bowser's Fury. Number 7, All the Marbles by David Wolk. Number 6, Silk Sonic, self-titled. Number 5, Halo Infinite. 4, Dungeons and Daddies, not a BDSM podcast. Number 3, Project Hail Mary, written by Andy Ware. Number 2, the creator James Tynion IV. And number 1, the Guardians of the Galaxy video game.
Yeah, so we gave you guys 20 great things to go check out.
And we're gonna probably we're gonna probably wait a week and then post this list onto our website if you ever want to go back and reference that.
Yeah,
We want to give you guys a reason to listen to this.
Maybe I'll even tweet it on the Twitter.
There you go.
Which you can go follow at Next Time On Pod.
There
Like
you
Cory
go.
said,
Good job.
this will be on the website, nexttimeon.net. And, of course, go check out the YouTube. Or if you're watching the YouTube right now, don't forget to like and subscribe. And click the bell, I guess. You can do that too. Anything else for the people, Cory, for this first episode of This Week?
Nope, that's nothing else for me.
All right, well, I've been Che.
I've been Cory.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.